the balancing act that I always try to figure out with the students, and I do not have this figured out, is how much to push and how much to challenge.
Hello, Meat folks. Welcome back to the MeatsPad podcast. It is your happy and hungry host, Phil Bass. Back with one of my mentors. I think I talked about having the triple crown, as they would call it, when I had Dr. Belk on. We had Dr. John Skanga not long ago as well, and Dr. Bob Delmore is actually back on a different topic this time, and something that I think is absolutely relevant and absolutely one that I think he is the expert, even though he's very humble about that. So, Dr. Bob, thank you for joining us again.
Phil, it's my pleasure. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And getting to do it at RMC is also lots of fun.
It's pretty cool. Yeah. So the reason I wanted to have you back is, we talk a lot about the technical side of meat science, but part of what we do as faculty members is teach. And I think you're a very effective teacher. I've taken several of your classes. They were many moons ago, obviously. But I know that you're a well-respected teacher. But then also you have a philosophy behind teaching, I'm sure. And I'd like you to share a little bit about what it is that you're thinking about when you are approaching the classroom, and what are ways that are effective to make sure that the students are gathering the knowledge that you're trying to share.
Yeah, I think there's two things that come to mind for me. The first is I've got to simplify the information, because I'm never the smartest one. I'm not even the smartest one in the classroom, but I'm certainly never the smartest one in the room. And I have to, in my mind, I have to boil the information down, not dumb it down, but I need to cut to the chase of what the information is. And so I don't try to remove things, but I try to make it so that they can see what it is that we're talking about. And so if I don't feel that the information that I'm conveying is in some way that they can make it relevant, not necessarily that they see themselves there, but somehow make it relevant to what it is that they're talking about. If it's a young person, worrying about, or I shouldn't say young person, if it's a person that's early in their career in an undergraduate program, worrying about cattle prices and worrying about that we're the lowest point in the cattle cycle in 61 years, while it's mind-blowing for us, they don't necessarily have a connection. And so we work hard to find the connection. The second thing is we try to spend as much time as we can, especially in the places where we have hands-on, is to get them in there and let them start doing it. This semester, I've got a student who is a classic student. She's a lot like a female Phil Bass. She's going 90 miles an hour, and she has found what it is that she's passionate about. You could have done anything. You could have been in construction. You could have milked cows the rest of your life, but you found meat science. And she is the same way. She sees herself. So we created an opportunity for her to work in the lab, and she is going 90 miles an hour. So it's two things for me. One is try to get it simplified, condensed in such a way they can understand, and then try to get them in doing something. We need more kids in meat science. We need more people seeing themselves in this. And if we can get them in a lab, if we can have them, steal a knife, if we can have them break a beef, if we can have them do whatever it is, we tend to have a little bit better luck.
Yeah. Well, I think you and I have a very similar philosophy, and I will attribute some of that to you and some of your mentorship in the past. But
I cheated. You're an easy first graduate student. The students didn't understand that you were my first graduate student, and I explained that to them because you had self-driven passion. Now I think it's nice that you found the meat industry, but again, you were very interested in chickens, and probably still are.
Yeah,
but
love chickens.
Now that you've found yourself, and we tried to lay a foundation, we tried to give you opportunities to do things, and I think we just have to keep figuring out new and different. Maybe the things that worked for you and I maybe won't work for these guys, and we need to figure out, and I just need to be smart enough to figure out what the next group wants to do.
You came from industry, and honestly, that's kind of been my background too. I've followed in your footsteps in that regard, and I don't think that was intentional. That was more opportunistic at the time, but I'm grateful for that time. So you spent time at Farmer John Meats, which was eventually a portion of Hormel, but not at the time when you were there. But tell us a little bit about your background. Working in the industry, you had to manage people, and you've already started to talk about the transition between maybe the classroom and then also the operations that are at, is it Ram Country Meats? Remind me.
Ram Country Meats, yes, that's our meat lab. That's our brand at Colorado State University.
Yeah. So coaching folks, maybe both in the professional environment, but then also in kind of more that training work environment. What's your philosophy on that?
When I got to Farmer John, it was a great opportunity. I spent about almost 6 years there. It was a family-run company, medium-sized company that didn't have a lot of procedures, had a lot of people that had worked there 30, 40, 50 plus years. And so I probably didn't learn till about 2 years into the process to settle down and be a little bit more patient. I mean, I was a little older graduate because I'd spent a little bit of time in junior college and not made a lot of progress, but then got serious about school. For the first couple of years, I probably learned a lot and I made a lot of mistakes. I needed to be a little bit more patient with those folks and realize that if you were just talking about the need to reduce listeria positive samples or listeria-like samples in the environment in RTE, that the folks should just automatically know why that was. By God, I knew what it was, then they needed to know. And if we were talking about salmonella or sanitary dressing procedures, but it took me a couple years to realize that I needed to, maybe it was trust the folks, help them understand why it was important, and strike the balance on how much to push them. So yeah, we did do a lot of formal and informal teaching. And we had a lot of good successes, but it came with a little bit. It came a little slow for me initially because I didn't have the patience. And so as I got the patience, and as they trusted me, they did better. And so you would have examples where people would be coming in and saying, "Hey, Bob, we did this and this happened. Oh man, and they'd bring things to you. And that's when you knew you started to have that connection. And so we worked hard to make sure that we were pushing folks, we were challenging folks, we were giving folks scientific answers. But at the same time, we were taking a breath, we were seeing it from their perspective. We were also trying to make sure that we were not being intimidating or creating an environment where they couldn't learn. I mean, I've used this example a lot, and I have, one of my best friends is a feedlot nutritionist, and this guy is off the charts smart. You know who I'm talking about. He's off the charts smart, but he's always been very approachable and patient with me. And I know there's times where I've brought up a topic and I've talked about the topic the wrong way, and he'll just back up a second and he'll lay the foundation, but he doesn't make me feel bad about it. And so in industry, it was critically important that if you wanted to convey that message, especially way back when, being a younger person, to a person that's been doing this for 30 years, we needed to convey it in a little bit more patient manner. And so I've tried to do better on that. Those that I wasn't patient with, like Phil Bass early in my career, can remind me where I wasn't. And that's something that we all develop our patience, and mine is still developing. The crew I have today, I mentor the crew that we have today, whether it's, I'm lucky that I have 3 staff members that are absolutely amazing, and the students, we do that a little bit differently. We still are very, very honest. We do a lot of tours. I was doing a tour the other day, and I spotted something that wasn't right.
Yeah.
And so we take a learning opportunity. But we take the learning opportunity coupled by, hey, here's why this is a bad idea. Here's why there's maybe a better way to do this. Or, hey, can you think of a better way to do this, why foreign objects are an issue? And we remind them of our frame of reference. I've had to write claims for foreign objects in product. My guys haven't worked in plants. They haven't had to write claims. And so I try to explain to them why this is a problem. And so I'm more patient. We had major professors. I had 2 major professors, one that was allowed major professor and one that was not allowed major professor. And we always try to strike that balance. But Lynn, she reminds me we have to be careful about starting with loud, because then everybody just thinks everything is negative and, Bob's starting with loud. So The last few years, people joke that Lynn and I have switched personalities completely, because now she starts with loud and I always start with quiet. But the mentoring is a little bit different at the school. More patience, more examples, certainly a lot less frustration, because maybe they're just in a different time, a different place, and it's going to take them a few more steps. Plus, I want to get more students opportunity.
Yeah.
And so if for whatever reason they don't feel comfortable, and in the old days I'd say, well, that's their fault. Well, I've got to figure out what it is reasonably to let them, to come in and make sure that they're comfortable, and whatever comfortable means.
Yeah.
Whether it's different hours, we have one, we have a mom that works for us, and she needs to take the kids and deal with them and manage them in the morning, so she comes in a little bit later.
Yeah.
We've got students that work in, they're on competitive teams. They've got things. We're very flexible about those kinds of things, and so it's just opening up my thought process a little bit. Still talk about science, still talk about the right way to do things. We still run the ship ridiculously tight, and my guys joke with me about that all the time, because it's not that it's Bob's way, it's that there's a process.
Yep.
And we do that process right. When I asked you the other day about a plant that I was in a question, you typed me back the scientific answer, and I used that in my communicating with this plant that was doing some startup.
Yeah.
And they've got some problems, but if I just yelled at them, this plant is dirty, they're not going to respond. I needed to line out some things for them, and one of them I used, you gave me. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad I could help in that regard. And that's part of what it is with our American Meat Science Associations. We're a family that we can connect and text each other back and forth on a day at a moment's notice in most cases, and I'm grateful that you were able to use some of that. But I've been writing down a number of things that you've mentioned, and the objective of this discussion, it started out as what's your teaching philosophy, but this is very much becoming more of a philosophical mentoring philosophy, and I appreciate all of what you said, and I want to reiterate just a couple of things. And so you mentioned patience, which is something that all of us need to work on, but I do believe that that really helps with building that trust with your students, with your employees, for those who are in the business out there listening to us, but also be willing to challenge people, because that's how you grow. That's how you get better. And it's not that it's a challenge of confrontation. It's a challenge of how can we fix maybe what a problem might be there, and what is the solution, and how can we work together to become better in the end, and then be accommodating. And this is something that I think, especially in the meat business, we haven't fully embraced. We're doing so more and more. But I think that's something that we need to better understand. If we want to maintain employees or students, for those in the academic world, we have to we have to connect at their level, and we have to understand why they're choosing to do what they're doing, or what are the needs that will keep them coming back. Everybody's a customer. It's not the person that's just paying off the invoice. It's your employees. It's your students. It's your family. All of these folks are customers in a sense, where if we can be accommodating, be willing to challenge them in order to grow them, and be patient, we're going to build trust, which builds relationships. And later on, you have that connection.
We touch on the challenge thing is one that even, in the later, I'm not completely done, but in the later stages of a person's career, they're trying to figure out.
Another 30, 40 years is all.
I appreciate it. You were easy to challenge in certain ways because, you were raised by a person, a father and a mother who would tell you straight up, and you didn't shy away. And so, we joke about, the relationship that we had, but my job was to challenge you on certain things, as was other faculty. When you went to the challenge of going on to CSU after our program there, a very different program, was to challenge you from an intellectual, from a research standpoint. The balancing act that I always try to figure out with the students, and I do not have this figured out, is how much to push and how much to challenge. With your own kids, I sometimes go past the mark. I had a daughter who was very concerned about applying to school because both her parents had a PhD, and she was, absolutely petrified that she wasn't even going to get accepted. Now she's, studying abroad. She was a state officer. She's getting ready. She's getting ready to start her teaching. But it's a balancing act, and I think you're right. And I'm always looking for some sort of an indication on how to challenge them. And as you get older, you're farther away from them. What motivates them? So we work hard on that. And the trust one is probably taking me a long time to understand that once they don't trust you, even though you're like, well, what do you mean? I'm not mean. I have this perception as being, a mean, scary guy. But my wife just says
You're hard and crunchy on the outside, but soft in the middle. That's what I tell people.
That I'm just an acquired taste. And so I I try to explain that to the students because I still have relevance. The relevance thing is what worries me about academia. I've got to make sure that I'm relevant in what I'm saying to industry, but also with my students. And if I feel like I'm not relevant, then that's probably what I need to, go do something different. Yeah. Go to Phil Bass's house and sweep the shop or something. I don't know.
Always
so I appreciate the way that you've, kind of paraphrased those. And again, last thing I'll reiterate is we need more students in this discipline. And yes, Steve Lonergan, I call it a discipline, but we need more in this field. We don't fill all the positions. And I am critically concerned about this. It's way off topic of teaching, but I'm concerned about it.
Yeah. Well, if we're not addressing those concerns or we're not even considering that it is a concern, then we're going to lose relevance, and we have to maintain relevance. And all the way down to just some of the details in the day-to-day operation. I always appreciated how you did take every opportunity. And I'll tell you, for those who don't know me personally, especially when I was Dr. Bob Delmore's graduate student 150 years ago, I was intolerably stubborn. And I also met a Bob Delmore who was a little more hard and crunchy on the outside. But I think both of us, as people do, change. I like to say I spent my time in the industry, and that turned me from a fresh rock gut whiskey into a little bit more tolerable, smoother drinking kind of situation. As you say, Bob Delmore is an acquired taste. Phil Bass can be at times too. But back to your relevance and making sure that every time you are teaching, you're making it so it's not a punishment, you are learning. All the way down to, and I remember this distinctly, is walking into a packing house or walking into a meat shop, and if there's a hairnet on the floor, pick it up, right? Don't walk past it. Don't just shove it to the side. Pick it up. Details, because eventually everyone around you is going to also see the pride and learn that we need to maintain a tidy shop. We need to continue to strive for excellence. We're never going to achieve perfection, but we can strive for excellence. And by doing that, we're all going to become better. And that's teaching. And that's management, and that's people management especially.
Well, you mentioned, paying attention to little things. When the students ask for something, I mean, whether it's the same thing that I've responded to 50 times, and I don't just start off with read the syllabus. I might end with, hey, it's a good place to see this, but I'm going to respond to them. They're paying a lot of money. We try to do our best. I'm there. I'm present. I don't miss classes. We run to the end. We try to honor what we're doing. And I think those types of basic things, are just the normal part of being a teacher. But it gets complicated as the system gets more complicated. Those of us that had to go through teaching in COVID, and I've got a couple of the folks that work for me, had to take one of my classes during COVID. And it was not good. It was probably horrible. It was in the transition, so we didn't even know barely what we were doing. And face-to-face teaching, I don't care who you are, face-to-face teaching is absolutely the best. There are other things that substitute, and I get it for people that are remote. I'm not running it down. Anybody, don't send me email. I appreciate it. But at the end of the day, that face-to-face, that connection is critically important.
It is the
last thing I'll say before you move on to your next point is we do need to work on nationwide in middle schools and high schools and in colleges. I can attest to we have an attendance problem. This chronic absenteeism is a problem, and we need to figure out how to encourage, motivate. I'm going to change the way that I take roll in the fall. I've got a colleague who's got a little bit better system that she thinks is an incentivizing way for them to get here. Instead of the old, I don't want to give them points to be here, I'm going to modify that. Why? Because we've got some folks that just feel like they can stay home and they need to be in there, and I don't want to lose them. I'm not, at the end of the day, if they don't come, right, I didn't drive to your house, but you didn't miss class. But I don't pull you out of your house to come to class. But I'm going to try to create a way that they're incentivized to come. And then, of course, while you're there, I took some classes. People taught me things at Cal Poly. Took some classes from an amazing educator. His name was Don Moss. And he taught you certain things about gaining trust, not scaring students. that
Smile goes a long way.
That's true. That's true. I mean, I'm not going to play folk music in my class. It's just not me. But we are going to make sure that they feel that they can come in. And if they're late, that's fine. They're still welcome. And if you see they're struggling, if we can figure it out, we're going to try to come up with a solution.
Yeah. Yep. We're here for them. We're here
Absolutely.
for both students and employees, for everybody that's out there listening.
I mean, attitude's at the top of the list. Whether you're in the plant, I mean, the plant I was in the other day, I didn't give the guys a hard time. I tried to say, hey, here's some opportunities. Because walking in and screaming, how good is that? How that's going to help? They need some solutions. They don't understand why the solutions are important to them, but that's okay. Just like the young person who's going to vet school doesn't understand why a meat science class is important. So we got to keep, we keep trying.
Well, that's back to the relevance. All of these things connect together, doesn't it? I got 2 more points. I know we're running a little longer on this one, but I think I don't care. This is my show, so. I want you to. We have talked about beef sticks for backpacks. I want you to give a quick update on that and maybe just a brief synopsis of what that is. What's the mission?
Oh, I appreciate that, Phil. About 4 years ago, Charity came to us and said, "Hey, we'd like to make some beef sticks to get out to kids that are food insecure in the state of Colorado, because we got 1 in 6 kids that are food insecure, and that's unacceptable." And so, in my infinite wisdom, I said no. And the long and the short of it is, a week later, we were working on the project because I was absolutely wrong. We've grown the project from making about 500 sticks a week to right now, we as a euphemism for the crew and the students that run that, we make about 20,000 sticks a week. They get distributed through backpack programs in all 64 counties at the university, and it is the only program that I know that works with a charity, a university, and the business community, the industry. The industry supports this. They support all the purchases of raw material, of the film, of the corrugated, et cetera. And my students, our students, manufacture the product, earn and learn at the same time. So it's a great program. It's growing. It's sad that it's growing. It's sad that we have to have these programs, but these kids need protein. We know if they don't have protein, it's a deficiency. So we're moving strong on it. We're always looking for different ways to improve it. We learn things all the time. One of our guys is an ace at troubleshooting on roll stock machines and printed film that most universities don't have. So it's going well, and we'll just keep moving forward.
People are learning, they're earning, and they're serving, and that is what a cool mission.
The serving thing, we remind them every day. This is giving back to the community, and the sad part is I did a tour the other day, and some of the folks were familiar. These were high school kids. They were familiar with the product. And so we certainly didn't say anything about that because they're familiar with the product because, they needed those meals. But it's at least there, and it's protein and it's beef and it's important. And, that meat, we take it from one form, we put it into a form that goes in our backpack. I like that. I appreciate Jordan Levy, who was from Five Rivers, and his wife, Shannon, bringing that opportunity to us, and we were smart enough. And I have to give a shout out to Claire and Sophia and Kyle, who manage all those students. We got 35 kids that are working for us in the meat lab, and they do a great job of doing this every day.
That's an amazing employee list. Awesome. Well, and you know what? Think of this as compound interest, hopefully, that those less fortunate kids that you did give a tour to who may have been recipients of this product, hopefully not only did you fill their belly that day, but you also, in the long run, set them up for success because they're getting protein in their diet at a point when they absolutely need it. When you're growing body, when we have a truly growing young body, they need protein. If you don't, you're not going to reach potential. And hopefully those folks are also going to be inspired to go out and help others at the same time. And so there's going to be compound interest in that for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Last thing I want to ask is, and maybe we did this last time we interviewed, but it was a long time ago. How did you get to where you are? How did you become a meat scientist?
Yeah, I don't know if I talked about it, and I'll give the short story. But I met my wife, Lynn Delmore. Most of you know that would be listening to this. And we went to junior college, and we started working for a small meat plant. And once I started working in that small meat plant, a lot of the things that we talked about in FFA, I wasn't in 4-H, but in FFA, started to make sense. And so that connection, a guy named Mike Santoro, in fact, I took my first meat class from him, but that connection was what it took for me. And it was amazing, again, because I didn't grow up in agriculture. I did not grow up on a farm or ranch. I grew up in a suburb. My parents were in the retail grocery business, so I had no connection. But from that point forward, agriculture and the meat industry embraced me. And that's what I remind people all the time. This industry is very inclusive, is very welcoming of everybody for a variety of reasons. And I had a great time in all the different steps. So yeah, that first touch point there in a small meat plant, that by today's standards you couldn't run, but that small meat plant was the hook. Was the hook for me.
Yeah.
That was the hook.
And then it snowballed from there.
And then it snowballed, absolutely.
Well, I thank you. I thank Lynn Delmore for carrying, making sure that you stuck it out too. But I thank you for your mentorship, for what you're doing today with beef sticks for backpacks, for the folks out there who need protein in their diet but maybe can't afford it. Thanks for sharing your teaching philosophy and also your management philosophy.
I appreciate the opportunity, Phil.
Yes,
it's always fun to visit with you.
Yeah, thanks.